First of all, let me thank you on behalf of the agency for inviting me to be today with you. The purpose of my presentation today is to provide a kind of overview of the OiRA project. I was asked to explain a little bit about the past, about the beginning of OiRA, and for that we have to go back to the Netherlands because OiRA is based on a Dutch tool. So I will give you some information about why at one point in the Netherlands they decided to develop a digital tool like OiRA. I guess it's going to be for the same reasons. At one point in Slovenia you decided also to develop or to be involved in such a project. Then the idea is to talk about today, so to give you an idea of where we are as far as the OiRA project is concerned. So I will go through the OiRA partners, the tools published, and our main OiRA drivers. And then the idea is to talk about the tomorrow. And I guess the tomorrow is to overcome the challenges that any kind of project like OiRA or any kind of tool like OiRA is going to face to reach micro small companies and to make them act. So my presentation about the past, the Dutch tool, let's say, is based on a presentation made by Jan-Michiel Meeuwsen from TNO, who is the institute in the Netherlands who developed the tool. So basically, I took some of his slides. And then also a case study about the review of Dutch experience. So you can download it on the website if you want to know the whole story about the Netherlands and the development of this tool. So basically, these slides are coming from this Jan-Michiel Meeuwsen, who prepared a presentation about this specific topic. So he was talking about the Stone Age risk assessment tools. Basically, he was referring to the traditional guides, a lot of papers, big documents, and basically not really very generic, not tailor-made for the companies, specifically at sector level. So basically, they were limited in the sense that they were not helping companies, at least it was perceived like this, help companies to assess the risks. And it was perceived as an excessive administrative burden also. So basically at one point, they saw that the number of companies assessing the risk was not increasing, and they were complaining about the kind of support guides were put at their disposal to help them with the risk assessment process. For most of these companies, because they carry out a survey, this traditional approach to risk assessment meant loss of time. They have the impression that they spend a lot of time doing the risk assessment when they have very limited resources. Also money, because in the case of the Netherlands also, for the small companies, they have to do the risk assessment, but the risk assessment has to be certified by an expert, so they have to pay for that. A lot of paperwork, and it was also perceived as very complex, difficult. For all these reasons, they decided to develop a new way to help companies to assess the risk. Then MKB Netherlands and Mario van Mierlo, who is going to make a speech in a few minutes, is representing MKB Netherlands, and the government went into cooperation with TNO, this National Institute for Health and Safety, to develop a tool. So they designed a tool for companies with less than 25 workers. The idea was to be interactive, digital, and modular. Because one of the ideas was, in the traditional checklist, some companies have to go through all of them, and sometimes most of the questions of the modules were not pertinent or relevant to this company. So the idea was also to give the opportunity to companies to skip these question modules were not relevant for them. To simplify, to help with the process. And this idea of to empower companies to assess the risk themselves. And also less paperwork and less cost. And the first risk assessment tool, the RIE tool, the OiRA in the Netherlands, was launched in spring 2004. So already 10 years ago. So what are the added values? And I will come in a few minutes about that. The maintenance and update is easy, because if there is a change, you can go to the tool and you update and you save and it's done. So I'm not going to go through all this presentation. So it's easier to be feeling for the employers. This tool was launched after a usability test. So we put employers in front of these tools so they can see, we can check if they are funding their way or not. And of course, it reduced, or it was perceived like this, the administrative burden linked to the risk assessment. And also you have the option to aggregate, monitor the use of these tools. Of course, as any tool, it has also its challenges. So sometimes, after a kind of assessment survey, also we could identify that sometimes it was perceived or there was a risk that these tools are used as a quick and dirty way to do risk assessment. Also, because it's an electronic tool, the tendency is perhaps to stay in front of your computer and not walk around your premises to really check, assess the risks. Also, you have to involve in all risk assessment the workers. So in this tool, in the OiRA tool, we encourage the participation and the real involvement of workers in the risk assessment process. Of course, the fact that you ended up, after using the tool, with an action plan, it doesn't mean that you are going to implement it. But of course, this is just a tool. It's not going to overcome all the difficulties linked to that. And also the challenge of promoting the tool. And this is something I will come in a minute. It's very good to have very good tools, but if we don't reach the end users, if they are not even aware that there is an existing tool, they are not going to use it. So we have to promote the tools. And if we don't promote them, perhaps sometimes it's better not to develop the tools. So after 10 years, in the Netherlands, they developed, well, last time I checked, it was around 180 tools. So little by little, they managed to cover most of the most important sectors, because these tools are sectoral tools. So the idea, this is the challenge with this tool, to cover most of the sector. You have a website, so I invite you to visit the website, and also they set up a kind of support focal point to support the developers and the end user. If they have questions, they can help them to go through all the process. And also the developer, and Igor underlined the issue of the importance of the social dialogue, the fact that the employers and workers are involved. They set up also a system of acknowledgement of the risk assessment tools. So basically the social partners acknowledge, validate the tools, and also the government. So these are the critical success factors for the Dutch case. It doesn't mean that you have to develop OiRA in Slovenia in the same way, but this is the way it was done there. So it was very important, the incentives for the developers and the users. The reducing legal obligation and cost act as a powerful incentive to companies. So basically in the Netherlands, if you use a tool recognized by the social partners, you don't need the tool to be certified by an expert. So the companies see the added value of using OiRA. Tools should be user-friendly and easy to use. And before publishing these tools, we have to test it on the field. If we develop a tool for the hairdressers, we have to involve hairdressers to make sure that it's user-friendly and easy to use. Sectors have the opportunity to give feedback and improve tools and validate them. After using a tool 1 year, 2 years, you can gather feedback from the field, and you have to improve your tool. Tools should be adapted to specific sectors, look and feel of the sector. We have to use the terminology used by the sector. So tools have to be customized to each single sector. And the idea is that they are validated by the sectoral social partners to improve credibility, and also because they are the ones who have to promote the tools. So it's important to involve them from the beginning. This promotion and communication also is very important. Awareness should be maximized through effective promotion and communication. That's why we insist we have to set up promotion strategies for promoting each single tool. Information for social partners, developers, business should be readily accessible, and social partners should be involved in developing and dissemination of the tool. We expect them to play an active role. In the Netherlands, the support to end users and developers, it was very important. So to provide training to companies if it's necessary. This is something, for instance, employers as organizations can do. For if there is a tool developed for the hairdressing sector, the employee organization for the hairdressing sector can also organize training for the members, also with the training unions. Tools should be adapted and validated regularly, because the message we send to the end users is this tool is updated at any time. And also, in the Netherlands, the support from the Ministry of Social Affairs and Employment was vital for the project. So this support, was economic support, but also more the political support is always needed and supported. And of course, it's very important to involve the ministry and the labor inspector, which is the case in Slovenia, because they are the one managing OiRA in the country. So they support the project. So at one point, we took the Dutch tool, the OSHA, and we internationalize it. That we consider OiRA as the legacy of the risk assessment campaign we carried out in 2008 and 2009. So starting from the Dutch tool, we translated and we adapted the tool into English, and then this tool supports multilingualism, so now it's available already in 18 languages. So before launching the project, we carried out some pilot projects. So the first country was Cyprus, and we have here Leandros Nicolaides, who will explain later on how was OiRA implemented in Cyprus. And we launched officially the tool in September 2011, so basically 3 years ago. What are the project goals of the projects? To contribute to the development of simple tools to facilitate risk assessment. That was from the community strategy 2007-2012, because we know there is a challenge, especially when it comes to micro small companies. Most of them, they do not assess the risk, and sometimes the quality of the risk assessment is quite poor. So the idea is to help them to start with the risk assessment process. Now, this is the main purpose of this tool, to help them to start with the risk assessment process, because most of them do not assess the risks. Also, to help demystify the risk assessment process. This is the idea to do it yourself. At the same time, we are not sending the message that you can do the risk assessment without any problem. The idea is you can manage the risk assessment. And also the tool, if at one point you cannot deal with a certain risk, we invite you to look for expert advice. Okay? But the idea is to help them to start with the risk assessment process in-house. And also to build the critical mass of social partners at EU level, national level, governments, public institutions interested in developing and disseminating risk assessment tools tailored to the specificities and needs of European micro small companies. Because the idea is we set up what we call an OiRA community, which is made of all the organizations, people developing OiRA tools, and the idea is to facilitate the development of OiRA tools at EU level. So this is the philosophy of OiRA, is this open source project community in which we share the photos, the content in a free way. So the software is free and open source, but also we also always underline that it's more than a tool, it's more than a software. It's also a diffusion model where social partners play a key role to reach the companies. And also the condition to become part of the OiRA community is that the tools are free for the end users, because we are aware that there is also private market. You have more and more companies developing these kind of tools, but of course for the members, for people who pay for that. But here it's free for the end users. The assessment of the added value, what we are offering as a EOSHA, we offer our intermediaries, and our intermediaries are national governments, social partners, access to the tool generator, to the tool that is going to allow you to create OiRA tools, and we provide training and help desk. So we offer a pan-European, multilingual, easy to use, free of charge tool. Of course, the agency is not developing this tool on its own. We are a tripartite organization, so in our board a third of the members are from the trade unions, a third from the employers, and a third from the governments. So, because this is a kind of a strategic project for us, we set up this OiRA steering committee, and some members of the board representing the employers, the governments, and the trade unions are involved, and all the strategic decisions regarding the project are taken by this committee. So, now let's move to today, where we are. So basically, we have 15 OiRA partners at national level. Most of them are ministries or labor inspectorates. You can see them here. For some of the countries, they already developed their own tool, the equivalent to OiRA. With this one, we collaborate at another level. So basically, we share experience, knowledge. We are facing the same challenges, so we provide each other information. If you want to know more about what we are doing with them, you can also have a look. You go to this link and you will have more information. We are also developing tools at EU sectoral social level, you know. So, and these tools are published in English with reference to the EU directives, and then we invite our OiRA partners at national level, this one from here, in the different countries, to adapt these tools to the national context. And we have published already 51 tools. You can have them here. And we have around 30 under development right now, and others planned for the near future. So basically, OiRA is a common platform available in 18 languages. We developed 51 tools in 12 countries, and before the end of the year, we will have tools in 15. And we developed some statistics, so we know that we have around 12,000 OiRA users accounts, so people who register, and more than 16,000 risk assessments already created. So it's a way to monitor. We don't develop statistics, but we track also if people open an account, if they've reached till the end, but not about how companies are feeling using the tool. So we set up a new community sharing information, knowledge, photos. So you can see here, we developed a tool at EU level from leather and tanning, and then it was adapted in Portugal and Spain. Some other time we developed a tool for the hairdressing sector in Belgium, and then it was adapted at EU level in English, so now it's much more accessible to the OiRA community. And then sometimes we have the hairdressing tool, for instance, for Cyprus. It was also taken and adapted. It was used as a basis for the tool developed in Portugal and in the Czech Republic. So that's the idea also, that we share the content of the tools. Of course, they are in different languages, but we translate them into English to make them more accessible. Because the challenge is to try to cover all the sectors. And in Slovenia, before you will have 180 tools, like in the Netherlands, it's going to take some time. So just to help you, we translate into English these existing tools, so you don't have to start from scratch. You can use this as a basis and adapt it. So the idea is much, sooner you will be able to cover all the sectors. What are the OiRA drivers of this? Why OiRA is working well, let's say? Because this is a new generation of risk assessment tools, and we are more and more aware that this is the future. So the main features is easy access, easy to use. Also, other advantages is that the dissemination is facilitated through internet, so it's quite cheap. You just have a link, you share a link, so it's much easier to disseminate than the traditional guides that you have to distribute manually. The content is evolutionary. There is a change in the legislation. You go to the OiRA tool generator where you create the tools, you adapt, you introduce the change, you publish again, and the tool is updated. With the traditional guides, you have to print it again. So the message you send to the end user, this tool is at any time updated. Also the didactic dimension. We foresee a stepwise approach to risk assessment, step by step. So people at the beginning, most of the companies don't know how to even start a risk assessment. So with this tool, you are taken from one step to the other until you have you report, the risk assessment report. Also, it's a platform from where to have other sources of information. In OiRA, you can put links to YouTube, in which you can show a video of how to do something in a safe way. You can also include links to where to find more information. So it's a platform from where to have access to other sources of information. Also, this idea to monitor the use of such tools, I will come in a minute, and also is perceived as an innovative tool, because you can run your risk assessment on your mobile phone, on your tablet, so it's also linked with innovation, so it's more attractive for people. So there is a general agreement, common perception that cooperation at EU level for the development of such tools is needed, especially in a context of economic crisis and limited resources. So basically we put OiRA at your disposal in Slovenia for free. The software, even translated. So basically you can use the resources just to develop the tools, but not to develop the whole software. Then this idea of mutualizing or pooling effort resources at EU level. So now you are part of this community at EU level where you have different countries developing tools are sharing the information, the content, and also the photos, because sometimes it's difficult to find photos to illustrate, a risk or a preventive measure. So this is the idea of fostering cooperation among EU national OiRA partners, researchers, to make much easier the development of these tools. So now we move to the tomorrow. So I guess if we the big challenge for us is to overcome the challenges related to OiRA, and the first one is lack of awareness, I would say. If you ask to micro, small companies why they do not assess the risk, they say, not necessary, no major problem. You can see the blue there. So basically, if you develop a good tool, but companies are not aware or they have the feeling that they don't have problems, it's unlikely they are going to use this tool. So this is the big challenge also. So OiRA also is a tool for increasing awareness. So we think OiRA can contribute to help micro small companies to fulfill the legal obligation, facilitate compliance, guide those lacking expertise, thinking risk assessment is too complicated to start with the risk assessment process, but above all, increasing risk awareness. So the other challenge I mentioned already a few times is to reach micro small companies. That's why we always say, perhaps the money you didn't spend in developing the software, please use it in promoting the tools. Because we have to reach micro small companies. We have to make them aware that the tool exists. And then we have to convince, to force them, I don't know what word to use the tool, to do the risk assessment. So the promotional side of OiRA is critical. So the OiRA community is fully aware of that. So we are developing more and more guides and documents or some ideas, good practice cases to help the developers of tools to promote their own tools. So we encourage for all the projects at national level and sector level to set up a promotional strategy. So first of all, to know the sector. To think about the channels to be used to reach the target audience. And adapt the messages to each specific sector. Sometimes to say that it's a legal obligation is not enough. So you have to look at other messages to try to evolve them in the project. The idea is to plan a real campaign and not just individual and isolated actions. Adding new communication channels, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, to the traditional ones. We are not saying that the traditional ones are not good. We are saying that this Twitter, Facebook is free because we are using platforms already existing. So make use of these platforms to try to reach some companies. And also the personal contact is crucial also. That's why we think it's very important that trade unions and employers' organizations are involved, because at the end of the day, they have a kind of authority. So they can encourage their workers or the employers, their colleagues, their peers, to do the risk assessment. I was talking about also the monitoring, and this is also very useful, not just to control if the tools are used or not, but also to increase knowledge about how to promote the tools. This is a tool developed in France by the INRS, the National Institute for Safety and Health, for the road transport. So you can see here, since they published the tool, they carry out some promotional activities. So you can see some peaks. So you can see if you manage after a press conference or press release or an article in a newspaper, then you can see you manage to bring new users to the tool. So this is very useful because we have limited resources also for promoting. So we have to know what works and what doesn't work. So this is also the added value of developing these statistics. First of all, to know if the tool is used or not, but also this kind of information. So we are increasing knowledge about how to promote and reach the micro small companies. Also, this is an initiative from the INRS in France for the road transport tool. We know that OiRA as a standalone project or tool is going to have its impact. But if we want to magnify its impact, it's better if we put it in a more framework or global strategy. And this is an example. For instance, this is in France. The company, the new employers who want to set up a company for the road transport sector, they have to go to organizations in France where they receive training and information about health and safety. If they follow the training and they use OiRA to do the risk assessment, they have an economic incentive. They have a discount when they buy material, safety equipment for their lorries. So, you know, OiRA is integrated in a much broader strategy or initiative. So that's a way to magnify its impact. Now to finish, some few words about the future. So the idea is to continue, at least at EU level from the agency, on this, to build on this unique and EU shared platform, because this is quite unique to have 18, let's say, countries working at the same time in the same platform and sharing information and good practice. So we have to continue to develop more tools and try to cover all the sectors. Also to facilitate the sharing of information of tools. That's why we develop what we call the OiRA libraries. For instance, we would like all the OiRA tools cover psychosocial risks. So we develop some standard modules about psychosocial risk intended to the developers of the tools. So, to make sure, to help them to deal with psychosocial risk at work. So we are developing more and more these standard modules for different issues. And also, as I mentioned, translate tools into English to make them more accessible to the OiRA community. I understand for you to work on a tool in Bulgarian is a little bit complicated, but if we translate it into English, it's much more accessible to you. And also prepare the field for the development of the second generation of OiRA tools by developing new functionalities. So we developed the tool already 3 or 4 years ago, so things are moving very, very quickly. So now we are thinking about new big developments to improve the tool and also to improve or to make easier for the tool to reach end users. So the idea is to make the tool much more accessible and flexible and adaptable to the specificities of each sector, because the hairdressing sector is not the same as the road transport sector. So sometimes we can improve the tool to make it more adaptable to the specificities of each sector in each country also. Allowing and fostering a different relationship between the developers of the tools and the end users. Because now with these kind of tools, we can have more feedback from the end users. We can know, or it's much easier to know if they use it or not, if they like it or not, if there is something they have difficulties in and we have to try to address in one way or the other. So basically we would like to gather more information from the end users. And from this kind of electronic tools, we can ask them, invite them to provide feedback. And this is what we are going to do. Also, to foster different kind of relationship. We have to take into account that most of the developers of the tools are labor inspectorates. And they see also this tool as a new opportunity to engage with the companies in a new way, and not in the traditional way. And integrated embed social media in the tool to facilitate its dissemination. This is something we can see in other tools. Perhaps an employee is in Facebook, in Twitter, so when he finishes his tool, he can share with his colleagues from the sector the fact that he did his risk assessment with his tool, And he can also add some comments about it was difficult or easy and things like that. So this is what we are trying to do. And also to develop a guest use access to the OiRA tools. Because now to have access to the tool, you have to register. But we found out, also with the statistics, that more and more people use these tools, for instance, in vocational training. For instance, the hairdressers in a country, instead of explaining them about OSHA in general or about risk assessment, they put them in front of the computer and they do a risk assessment. So it's a way to know practically what does it mean to carry out a risk assessment and to know more about the risk and the preventive measure in the sector. But for this kind of use, with the guest use, it's enough. They don't need to record the information at the end. So that's also something we would like to do. Because we found out that OiRA is not only used to assess the risk, but also to increase awareness, to train people about risk. So this is another use, not the main one, but other use to be promoted. And I think that's all from my side. Thank you.